In the mid-19th century, as Western ships were venturing deep into the Far East, there was a sea that even the Royal British Navy feared to tread, not because of the storms, but because of one woman. She was known in history as Qing Shi, the Queen of the South China Sea. Within 10 years, she commanded over 70,000 sailors, 1,800 warships, a force larger than the navy of many nations at that time. But she was not born to be a pirate. She was a woman who learned to command ambition, fear, and loyalty with just her eyes.
Night is young and the wine is...
Before becoming a symbol of power, she was just an anonymous woman living by the coast of Guangdong. No one knew exactly when she was born, only that she once worked on a passenger ship, where men came for pleasure and women sold their youth to drunkenness. But it was there that she learned two things. First, every man has a weakness. Second, whoever holds information holds power. When Cheng de Fuerin, a notorious pirate of the South China Sea, boarded the ship, she didn't see him as prey, but as an opportunity. At the port of Canton, 1801, amidst the crashing waves, the salty smell of fish, and the sound of metal clanging against masts, Cheng Hui, a fearsome pirate, was drunk on victory. It was said that no ship crossed the straits without trembling at the sight of his red flag. That day, he went to a famous floating brothel. There he met a woman who stood apart. She didn't smile, didn't bow, didn't try to please. When he asked, "What do you want to come with me?" she replied, eyes unblinking, "I follow no one. But if you want me by your side, I want half of what you own." It was the first time Cheng Hui had been challenged, not by a blade, but by intellect. One night on the South China Sea, Cheng Hui brought wine to the deck and challenged her to a game of chess. She didn't play, only looked at the map spread on the table and said, "You play chess well, but you still think like a general. I think like one who rules an empire." When he asked why, she pointed to the map and said, "You rule by force, but if you die, your fleet will scatter like foam. I rule by law, and laws live longer than men." That sentence changed Cheng Hui's entire view of power. From that night on, she was no longer just his woman. She was the brain of the entire fleet. A year later, when the Qing dynasty placed a massive bounty on Cheng Hui's head, he was nearly betrayed by one of his own captains. It was she who devised the plan to fake his death, spreading rumors that Cheng Hui had been killed at sea, while secretly hiding him in a merchant ship's secret compartment, releasing false information to mislead both the Qing Navy and rival fleets. When he returned, people called her the strategist of the red flag, and Cheng Hui himself never gave an order without consulting her first. After Cheng Hui died in a storm in 1807, his fleet, red, black, blue, yellow, purple, and white, fell into chaos. The generals fought for command, and that was when the woman they underestimated rose. Qing Shi declared, "If this sea once bowed to my husband, now it will bow to me." When power fragmented, the South China Sea was divided once more. 6 fleets, 6 generals, 6 flags, and one woman standing amidst the storm. But she did not fight or fire a single shot. Instead of swords, she chose the path of those who understand where true power lies, in men's hearts and in their fear. Qing Shi summoned each commander to a conference of spoils aboard her flagship. On the table lay a detailed list of the fleets, their ships, men, and supplies, meticulously compiled by her spies. When the commanders argued over who should be supreme leader, she said one sentence: "No one deserves to be king until he sees the whole board." Then she ordered a signal cannon fired, a signal every fleet mistook for an attack order. Immediately, patrol ships began firing upon each other, thinking they had been betrayed. Within an hour, the sea ran red, yet she stood still, sword unsheathed. When the chaos peaked, she raised the largest red flag from her flagship in order to ceasefire. Her voice echoed through the speaking horn. "You are killing each other because of me. But if all of you die, who will rule the seas? The red flag needs no king. The red flag needs law." She stepped forward under the heat of dozens of loaded cannons and threw down a book, the Red Flag Code, that she had written herself. Inside it stated, "Anyone who betrays will be beheaded. Anyone who robs the people will be executed. Anyone who surrenders will share the profits fairly, based on merit." Not another shot was fired. The commanders realized that without her, they would all die in chaos. She didn't kill them with a blade. She killed them with the truth that none of them were strong enough to survive without her law. And that was when the red flag became an empire, not through victory, but through order. From then on, the South China Sea was divided into clear zones of control. The Red Flag Fleet ruled from Guangdong to Hainan Island. Every merchant ship passing through had to seek permission and pay a fee, just like a government tax. For the first time in history, a woman commanded more than 70,000 men and 1,200 ships, running a nation upon the water. Qing Shi did not just unite ships. She united human fear and greed into a law, a symbol, and a crimson flag flying over the South China Sea. In the 1810s, the Qing dynasty, Portugal, and Britain began to feel threatened. The Red Flag Fleet was not just looting. It controlled trade routes, collected taxes, and offered protection. A pirate empire was rising, led by a woman. From Canton to Macau, sailors told tales of battles where, at the sight of the red flag, enemy crews fled. One of her most famous victories was at the Battle of the Greater Changsha, where Qing Shi used cannon smoke, monsoon winds, and burning ships to deceive her enemies. When the Portuguese fleet entered the bay, they saw wrecks drifting, thinking the Red Flag Fleet had been defeated. But at that moment, 200 of her ships struck from both sides like ghosts. It was not just a military victory, it was a declaration. This South China Sea belonged to no empire. No empire lasts forever. After nearly a decade of dominance, the Red Flag was no longer a fleet. It was a nation upon the sea, and that made it the greatest threat to every dynasty. In 1810, the Qing dynasty, with Portugal and Britain's backing, launched a campaign to erase the Red Flag Fleet. At White Dragon Bay, Portuguese cannons roared. Their steel ships outgunned Chinese sails threefold. Red sails burned on the horizon. 3 of Qing Shi's fleets were shattered, hundreds of ships destroyed. She gave no order to counterattack, only stood still on the deck, watching the tattered red flag in the smoke. Her lieutenant asked, "Madam, what are your orders?" She replied, "We won't fight this battle with cannons. We'll fight it with our minds." 2 months later, the Qing court sent envoys with an imperial decree demanding surrender. The terms: hand over all ships, weapons, and commanders for imprisonment. Those who surrendered would be pardoned. Those who resisted would be executed. Qing Shi received the decree, neither tearing it nor bowing. Instead, she sent back a gift: a box containing a detailed map of the Qing Empire's trade routes along Guangdong's coast, with a note: "If you want my surrender, imagine who will protect your merchants when I leave the sea." The court was shaken. They realized, if Qing Shi died, thousands of pirates would splinter into countless rogue bands, an uncontrollable nightmare. She made the Qing realize, sometimes the enemy is not the most terrifying thing. It is the void left when the enemy disappears. The negotiation at Canton. Qing Shi herself sailed to Canton. She brought only 10 unarmed guards. Before the governor-general and Portuguese officers, she stepped forward, laid a red cloth on the table, and spoke slowly. "You call me a pirate, yet I collect taxes, maintain order, and protect traders. You collect taxes to wage wars. So tell me, who are the real pirates? The hall fell silent. No one expected that a woman, once sold into prostitution, would dare to challenge an empire's rhetoric of rule. She pulled out the red flag code, tossing it on the table. These are my laws. If you can govern the seas better, I will bow. If not, let me teach you how to rule. Instead of full surrender, Qing Shi proposed a treaty. All sailors would be pardoned and absorbed into the Qing Navy. 80% of the ships would be legally transferred to the court, effectively nationalized. Astonishingly, the court agreed, because they knew only Qing Shi could control the South China Sea without bloodshed. In history, few pirates have been granted negotiations, but Qing Shi not only negotiated, she won. About 17,000 pirates were pardoned, hundreds of ships absorbed into the Qing Navy. After leaving the sea, Qing Shi opened a gambling house and brothel in Canton. She was never prosecuted. No one dared touch her. Some say it was the end of a criminal, but in truth, it was the triumph of a woman who understood power's true nature. She once ruled the sea with guns, but later ruled men with money and intellect. She lived until 1844, dying peacefully at age 69, something few pirates in history ever achieved. And thus, the legend closed. Not with blood, but with the wisdom of a woman who knew the tide of her time. In human history, few women have ever commanded such a vast force. Qing Shi was not only the most powerful female pirate, she was a strategist, a leader, and a negotiator. She needed no crown. The red flag was her crown. And on that vast ocean, where the sunlight bleeds red into the horizon, the legend of Qing Shi endures. As a reminder that true power does not lie in the sword, but in the hand that can hold both the heart and the fear of men.